114 years ago, Ford unveiled the Model T. 4 years ago, Ford unveiled the Mustang Mach-E, their first true all-electric vehicle. Since the release of this car, Ford has started their own revolution with electric vehicles, releasing the F-150 Lightning and promising a lot more for their future Model E program. They are still in the scaling process, but the Mach-E is one of their main EVs available to buy, and it comes in the very popular crossover SUV shape. Today I'm going to review the 2023 Mustang Mach-E, break down the good and bad in my experience, and compare it to its biggest rival, the Model Y, so let's get into it. Ford recently reopened orders for the Mustang Mach-E, dropped its price, increased its range, and changed battery chemistries on standard range models. So today this car starts at $43,000. That's for the standard range select model, and this car goes up to a $60,000 starting price for the GT model. Today I'm reviewing the base model, since this is often what people are interested in, but I'll let you know the main upgrades you get with other trims throughout. The design of the Mach-E is unlike any previous Mustang. Overall, it doesn't really seem to fit the category, but it feels like Ford wanted to use their popular brand name to show just how important this car is. It's a crossover SUV with some Mustang signature design features like the vertical taillights and Mustang logos all around the car. There are these accents in the headlights, inside the charge port, under the hood, and more. When you lock or unlock the car or turn on the blinker, you'll see a nice sweeping across the lights as well. This is something that just adds a certain bit of flair compared to other EVs out there. It's a standard 4-door vehicle that seats 5 with a roomy trunk, decent front trunk, and sloped roof line. It's a bit of an illusion compared to other sloped EVs due to the way it's painted. It looks like it's sloped more than the roof itself actually does, and this helps provide more room for rear passengers. One big detail you may notice though is the lack of door handles. We're seeing flush door handles more and more to get the best possible aerodynamics out of electric vehicles, so Ford decided to just eliminate them altogether. Instead, with the key fob in your pocket, you press the button on the pillar and the door pops out a couple inches from there. Then there's this very small handle that you grab to open the door. In practice, this is very easy to use and you get used to it right away. It works the same in the rear, except you just grab the door instead. Worth noting that the door won't close on itself while open like this, so you won't smash your fingers. I actually like this design quite a bit and found it very easy to use compared to the other flush handles out there. Around back is my favorite view of the Mach-E. It looks like a cool Mustang SUV and has well-designed lines. There's the Mustang logo just like up front, a rear wiper, those classic taillights, and the hatchback trunk. In this base model, this trunk does not come powered, but it's powered in the other trims. There's quite a bit of space in the back there, and the flatbed itself can be repositioned to sit around 2 to 3 inches lower if you prefer. Then the back seats fold down manually, providing a great amount of rear space. This sort of completely flat space is becoming more common in these cars and will allow you to fit a lot of cargo. One of the benefits of this car being fully electric is the additional storage space. However, there isn't much under storage space to speak of in this car. There is a little bit available under that panel, but hardly anything compared to what something like a Tesla Model Y provides. In the back, there are also hooks for cargo and a 12-volt outlet. Up front is the front trunk, and this feels very much like an afterthought, which is unfortunate to see. Ford basically just took a normal hood system that's designed to be used infrequently and used this for the quite spacious front trunk. Inside there is quite a bit of usable space that could be very useful regularly, but you release this by pulling the classic hood lever inside the vehicle twice. You can also release it from the screen if you prefer. Then to close it, it comes down very quick like a very heavy hood, and you sort of slam it shut. It's kind of the polar opposite of the Model Y front trunk, which is easy to release, but then you have to be gentle when you close. While I prefer an in-between of these two or a powered front trunk, the Mach-E front trunk doesn't really invite me to use it all that often. Around the Mach-E, you'll see 5 cameras that work together to provide a 360 overhead view and help with self-driving features included in the car. There are also ultrasonic sensors on each bumper and an active grille in the front that opens or closes depending on what is needed most. To get inside, you'll need the included key fob or to use the Ford app. There's also a digital number panel along the pillar if you forgot your key. So there are multiple ways to get inside of your car if you lost your key fob or even if your phone died. Then you can even set a code inside the car that allows you to drive without the key on hand. Once inside, you'll notice that it's very roomy and comfortable for adults in the front and back. The front seat is fairly comfortable, has various electric adjustments, and then one base model thing to note is the fact that the passenger seat adjustments are entirely manual. The rear seats are a standard bench of 3 seats with the center seat including fold-down cup holders. Along with normal window buttons and such on each door are the handles to release the door on the way out. These are a distinct design that I haven't seen much in other cars in general. They take a bit more time to get used to, and you'll kind of be reaching around and then remember where that handle is, but they work fine. In most trims of the Mach-E, there's a beautiful glass roof. This gives you great views as a rear passenger and brings a lot of light into the interior of the car, but the base model we reviewed does not include that, so that's worth noting. As you'll see, there are enough base model downgrades that it may be worth paying the few $1,000s extra to make this car feel much better. Up front is the center console with 2 levels, an armrest with storage inside, a 12-volt outlet and a sliding drawer, a wireless phone charger, USB A and C ports, a standard glove box, door pockets, and then your interface as a driver. Ford decided to take some design elements from their most popular cars and blend it with Tesla's approach, adding a large 15.5-inch center vertical touchscreen to the dash. This screen controls a lot of what you do. However, you still have 2 traditional stocks, multiple buttons on the steering wheel, additional buttons for lights and more behind the wheel, mirror adjustments on the driver door, and then a gear shifter and parking brake near the armrest. Lastly is the start-stop button. The Mustang Mach-E is built like many other legacy electric vehicles with a button that turns on full vehicle functionality. I personally can't wait until these buttons disappear because the experience can be a bit confusing since there isn't anything to, quote, start. It's unnecessary, and Tesla, Rivian, and Lucid, and others have proven this to be the case, but if you're coming direct from a gasoline vehicle, it may feel the most comfortable. After those physical controls come the 2 screens. Behind the wheel is a small instrument cluster display, and then there's a main center screen with a built-in scroll wheel. Right now I'm inside the Mach-E and we have our 2 screens. The instrument cluster display is going to display stuff normally, but it's dark right now, and that's because the car itself is not on. It has a start-stop button. I have my gripes with start-stop buttons, but especially in this car, there's just so many chimes that I'm not entirely sure. Check this out when I click start. It really feels like I'm just constantly doing something wrong every single time I turn on or off the vehicle, and then I turn it off, and we have this message. Then it usually would do other stuff, but especially if I get in the car. Oh, and now since I opened a door, it looks like this one turned off. Okay, so now I'm in the car, and the door is still open, so I'm going to press this, and I think I get extra chimes because it's going to tell me over here the driver door is ajar. We're just keep on going. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that right off the bat. So the instrument cluster display, when you're driving, it's going to show your gear selection, your speed, your charge level, range prediction, all of that stuff, your current mileage. And one thing I noticed is it really is smaller than a lot of other screens. So a lot of other cars that have instrument cluster displays, it's a lot bigger than this usually. This is actually one of the smaller ones I've seen. Now this does beat Tesla in the Model 3 or Model Y because it actually exists over here and it's not just one screen over here, but it is smaller than something like the Ioniq 5, and that's worth noting. But now this is your main screen. It's 15.5 inches, but it's vertical, so it has some differences compared to Tesla or other cars that use a horizontal display here. Now one thing I noticed right off the bat is it works fairly well and it's designed pretty well, but it's not as quick as other ones you're used to. So if I go into settings right here, even that right there is slower than other cars, and then pretty much everything that I press takes at least a second. Vehicle, it even had little loading bars. It just takes longer to get into each menu than a lot of other cars. This is definitely slower than I've experienced in the GV60. The Lucid kind of felt this way, but I think has been updated since. Rivian, Tesla, everyone else has a much quicker interface than this. But your basic controls right here, you have whisper, engage, or unbridle, and those are your 3 drive modes. And then you have a few buttons here. This will release the front trunk or the trunk itself. You can turn on or off one pedal driving. You can even have a propulsion sound for when you accelerate, and then turn on or off auto hold, and that's where it holds the car when you come to a complete stop, so you don't have to keep your foot on the brake. Interesting button right here is calm screen, and that just goes into kind of a sleep mode, and then you tap again and you're right back into where you were. So navigation is built in right here. Overall it's pretty good, but definitely not as zippy as you're seeing in a lot of other electric cars these days. It's definitely built on an older system. And you can see it especially in things like the rear camera. This is great, and it's an overhead 360 view, which is something that Tesla still does not have, but it does leave some to be desired because I wish this could just be bigger on screen. And it's definitely an older graphic, and when you're gonna back up, it's an older graphic as well, and you can tell. When you click home here, you have a few different options like your radio, media, CarPlay, which I assume a lot of people will end up using, and then Sketch is kind of a fun Easter egg you can draw in the car. And I guess this is kind of a good demo of the speed of the screen. Right now I'm charging at a charge point station, and the charger itself maxes at 50 kilowatts, and we're right at the top of the range. So we're not expecting any great speeds here or anything, but this will give you your charge information, your range prediction. So we're almost at 100%, and it's saying 226 miles of range. That's because this is a standard range version. So for media, it seems that everything is pretty much going to be reliant on a device. Right here I click media and it just says connect device.
Search for your vehicle on your device and select it once it is found.
And it's walking me through that step. In this case, I'd probably just use Apple CarPlay. And you can actually do wireless Apple CarPlay, which I've heard good and bad about for this car. If we go home right here and then go over to entertainment, we'll see that there's actually quite a bit of entertainment. So while Sketch is in just the normal apps, entertainment has YouTube, NBC, NBC Today, and a few different games. I think Sketch should just be in here, but it's cool to see all the games that it has. I think one good example of the speed of this screen to where it would actually potentially bother you is, let's say I'm in navigation, I'm using my steps, and then I want to see my tire pressure. So I'm gonna click up here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to click up there and then click tire pressure, and then it comes up. It's not like the biggest delay. That was only a few seconds, but when you're used to how quick it is in other vehicles, you definitely see that this is lagging a little bit in the UI design. One kind of cool thing about the Mach-E that I've noticed in the UI is that regardless of where you are, your last few apps are going to be right down here. So that's actually kind of nice. Like if I was deep in the tire pressure menu and I just am driving and quickly want to get back to my navigation, right here, I tap that and I'm back to navigation. And then once I go somewhere else, say I'm connecting to music, it pops up right here because it was my last used app. So they're kind of opting for that as opposed to a dock, which is what a lot of other brands are doing. And then of course, climate is controlled down here. And one thing that some people love and some people don't love is this physical scroll wheel. It's actually pretty nice and physical how it works. And once you're controlling, say the temperature, you can then change it with the wheel itself. Right here, this turns on the radio, then you can turn down your volume, and that's the main control most of the time. That's its default, but then it will change to other things if you're adjusting the climate, and you can clearly see, and now I'm adjusting my temperature. For some people, that's a really nice blend of a screen with an actual tactile control. My personal opinion is that this control is actually more of a reach than it would just be to touch a button on the steering wheel. So I'd rather just use that myself, which I can use over here with these volume buttons. For that reason alone, I don't really see the need for this because a passenger could then just tap on screen if they're trying to adjust the volume, and me driving, I will just always opt to use this one. The Mach-E does have driver profiles, so here is where I create a new driver profile. I give it a name, add a photo if I want, and I can link a key fob and link my phone. So it's gonna automatically adjust to my driver profile when I get in the car, which is great to see. The main settings it's telling me that will adjust for my driver profile are driver assistance, navigation, phone, and audio, and all of that's gonna be saved automatically. So there's a lot of settings in here throughout these menus, and then there's driver assistance settings, and a lot of people are gonna be interested in this because they have adaptive cruise control that also allows lane centering with hands-free, and that's through their Blue Cruise system. You can also turn on a few other settings like lane change assist, in-lane repositioning, speed limit assist, lane keeping system settings, pre-collision assist, and much more. Overall, as I usually tell people with things that are controlled on screen like this, most of this isn't stuff you're going to be actually needing to change at all when you're driving. So the majority of your driving controls are going to be just on this main controls menu if you really want to change your drive mode in the middle of driving, or they're on the steering wheel or at this bottom part of the screen that is always on right here. So here's another example of some unnecessary beeps in my opinion. I'm at 99% charge, so I'm gonna go unplug the car. I don't feel the need to actually turn this off because I'm about to get right back in and go for a drive. It's nice and cool in here. Don't want to turn off the AC, but let's open the door. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I get 10 chimes, and now I'm gonna go and unplug. As you can see there, the screen and UI definitely leave some to be desired. I've come to realize though that this type of design does appeal to a lot of people. Going from driving a gas vehicle for 30 years to a Tesla is a big leap. Ford is trying to have that leap make a little more sense, especially if you've come from Ford products in the past. Overall, I definitely understand this approach, but I do think the way this screen functions will need significant improvement in the next few years in order for the products to keep competing. A generation growing up with iPads and iPhones may not want the lag this screen has, especially if another car has better functioning UI. Now let's take it for a drive. The car is already on. Now I'll just shift using this wheel down here into drive, and let's go for it. Overall steering and handling, I do feel it pretty tight. It's a little looser in my personal experience than what I'm used to with a modern 2023 Model Y, where it's just a little more responsive and just the tiniest little movement means you're steering. This has a little bit of give before I'm actually turning. And some people like that, some people don't. Overall, it feels great though, and it's definitely a smooth ride. I'm definitely not complaining about ride quality yet. This is a pretty smooth parking lot though, so we'll give it a real test. Now let's give it some speed here. Whew. Yeah, that's great. This is the base model, so it only gets better from there, and I think that, just like I feel with a Model Y, is plenty of power. So that was the speed in Engage. Let's check out Unbridle, which it says is exhilarating drive, machine and road align as one, more responsive acceleration and steering. So we'll just do like an actual launch here. Let's see. All right, that's definitely a base model launch. Yeah, you can feel it, but it's great. So I'm just gonna go back to Engage, balanced drive, everyday fun. I feel like this is what most people would use. But then Whisper, the description there is seamless drive, calm and quiet, smoother acceleration and steering, the best mode for slippery conditions. So I'll just go back to Engage, kind of feels like your all-purpose mode or whatever, and that's what I'll be using for the majority of this drive. So as I was talking about with the screen, is there's not really like a home base, but there are all the different apps and they collect here with what you used most recently. So I'll go into my navigation as we navigate around here. And then I think I press there. Now we're north, up, all that stuff. So on the instrument cluster display, as I mentioned, it's definitely smaller than a lot of other cars have, but it's very useful. It has my speed limit, the gear I'm in right now. I like that it says ground speed. Definitely very Mustang right there. And then just has like a car visualization as opposed to my car versus the cars around it or the lanes or anything. Then I have my range and my charge and all of that stuff. One of the biggest parts about electric cars in general is regen braking, and I think Ford has done a great job in the Mach-E here. I have one pedal driving on. It's not quite as strong as other cars I've experienced, but overall it's very good and I'm already used to it. Versus something like the Ioniq 5, sometimes I wasn't confident that I could actually only use one pedal driving. It didn't feel like it was designed for that. Versus this, I'm coming up to a stop here. This is pretty much no problem. I had to let off just a tad earlier than I'm used to in a Tesla or a Rivian, but overall, it's great. So now let's see that backup camera in action right here. I'm gonna turn around, flip into reverse, and the backup camera will pop up along with the 360 view. Now this is just a pretty traditional backup camera type situation. It works great, but it's not the prettiest in my opinion compared to other cars. And then the overhead, I could definitely use some more here, but it's great that it's there. Here's that overhead camera in use. You could see that car when it drove by just then. Also just pulling up to a curb right here. Pretty nice that you have that overhead visualization, especially with electric cars and curb rash being a little easier because the wheels are designed for efficiency. That's something I miss on a Tesla for sure, and they've promised that feature for a long time and never delivered it. One thing I've been curious about is this acceleration sound. So I can go to controls here, propulsion sound, and let's click info. Generates sound inside the vehicle when you accelerate to enhance the driving experience. The intensity of the sound is enhanced or turned off as appropriate for your current drive mode. Okay, propulsion is on. I'm in Engage. Don't really hear much when I'm just going 15 miles an hour, but when I accelerate, it's very subtle. It's very subtle. It's just kind of like a low rumble. For some people, that might be your thing, but in my opinion, since it's faking it, it's not really a thing. Let's check it out giving this the full power of engage mode. I guess I can understand if you're coming from a Mustang and you still want it to be a Mustang, but let's see if it gets any louder in Unbridle. Yeah. Does it ever change gears? No, that's all we got. All right. That's kind of fun. I don't know. It's kind of fun to have that built in, but of course it's unnecessary and just kind of a gimmick. But I get why they put it in the car, and for some people, they might love that. I personally love that it's quiet when I accelerate in an electric car, because it's kind of this fun thing of like, this is not at all a gas vehicle and it's accelerating faster. Ride quality is really great and smooth. These aren't the worst roads, but even going over some bigger bumps like this right here handles it really well. Definitely better than other cars in its class, and I'm definitely happy to see that. I am always curious though, this is the smaller battery pack, so you're obviously adding weight with a bigger battery pack, so that could make a difference in the ride quality when the car is quite a bit heavier. Just purposely hitting some bumps. Just absorbs them really well. The Model Y has gotten a lot better, and I don't really complain much about the ride quality in that car, but this is still a little bit better. The blind spot monitoring system in this is more of a traditional one, and this is what I'm used to driving a Rivian R1T, where it just has a little blind spot indicator on the mirror. That is pretty standard in a lot of cars and has been that way for a while, but there's no blind spot camera that's going to pop up on screen when I change lanes or anything like that. To me, I think I prefer the camera to this, but I would love a system that has both indicating here and giving me a camera that pops up on my turn signal. In the Tesla, you don't have the mirror thing, but you have stuff on screen and you have the blind spot camera. In a car like this or a Rivian or most other cars, you don't have the blind spot camera on screen, but you have the indicator on the mirror, which is a convenient location. I think the ideal system would be both. I want to check out Ford's Blue Cruise system, which will do some lane keeping on the freeway, and it's supposed to be like Tesla Autopilot. And the built-in Tesla Autopilot is actually what I recommend most, and that doesn't come with auto lane changing or anything. So I'm really curious to try out this system, see how it compares to the built-in Tesla Autopilot system. So right now I'm going to navigate south of where I'm at. So I'm just going to go to Disneyland, and I'm curious to see how this works. We can see all of this interface. It definitely doesn't feel like brand new car with tons of software features interface. This definitely feels like it's taken from older cars, which I'm sure is exactly what it has done. And it's another example of a car where they're kind of relying on Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. That's what you're gonna want to use in these cars most. And Ford is committed that they're definitely keeping those in their cars for a long time, versus GM is planning to actually phase out those systems in favor of their own software, taking very much a Tesla, Rivian, Lucid approach. Although Lucid actually just added CarPlay. And the way Blue Cruise works is that the freeways have to be predetermined and they have to be pre-mapped and available in this system. So hopefully these are both available, because this is just like Southern California where people definitely are driving Mach-E's. But let's see. The controls for Blue Cruise are all right here on the left side. So I engage it right here. I can choose my set speed up or down with this switch here, and then I can change my following distance if I prefer. So just accelerating up onto the freeway, just like most well-made electric cars today, this gives you a lot of great power, and it's very useful when you need to make an assertive move on the freeway, an assertive lane change, or you just need to get around something quickly in the safest way possible. It's very useful there. So now I'm on a road that I don't think is actually a labeled Blue Cruise road, so I want to see what happens. I'm going to press the Blue Cruise button, and it's giving me an indication, and actually I think it's steering for me. Yeah. So it's telling me to keep my hand on the wheel, but then I should be able to go hands off. But then if I press the brake, does it disengage? Yes, okay. Just disengaged. Right now I'm on a road next to a freeway, so it's not the actual freeway itself. And I want to test and see if Blue Cruise will pop up, and also see how it works, because you're supposed to be able to let your hands off of the wheel, because it has right here some driver monitoring that's actually going to be seeing that your eyes are on the road. It uses that approach as opposed to steering wheel force like Tesla uses. So I'm going to wait until I straighten out a little bit, because even with autopilot, that's what I would do. And let's try it out. It is now engaged. I think it's going. It says ready. It has the little icon for my hands to be on the wheel, but I think it's going to be turning for me here. All right. And now I think as long as it sees my eyes on the road, it knows that I am good to go. Oh, no, it says keep hands on steering wheel. So maybe this is a situation that requires that. Also, I'm going to bump up my speed, I think. Yep. Woo! Wow, that is taking that turn pretty intense, but it did it. Now it should be stopping for this car. Just to be clear, I'm not controlling in any way right now. I'm just keeping my hands on the wheel. Okay, so I'm a little close to this Subaru, so let's see if I can change the following distance. Yeah. Oh, that's 4, 3, 2, and 1. It was at 1, so I'm going to try out 2. Yeah, that feels a little better for me. Super interesting to me that I have to keep my hands on the wheel, because the whole advertisement of this thing is that it's a hands-free system. So maybe if I get on like the i5, it'll actually know what to do there and let me take my hand off the wheel. Handle that well, the car changing lanes. Now sometimes merges can be awkward in autopilot, so let's see how Blue Cruise does. Ooh, all right. This is actually doing a really great job. As far as confidence in the system, one thing I think autopilot has over this is the visualization aspect. For this, I don't really see anything that the car is aware of around me. Versus in autopilot, you can see that it's at least aware of all the cars in your immediate position, and it shows you the curvature of the road ahead of time and stuff. Versus the visualization on the instrument cluster is basically just, hey, there's you, you're in self-driving, and there's a car in front of you. And then here's your top speed and all that stuff. But it's not really showing me and giving much confidence that I know it's going to handle this turn well, even though it's totally doing so. So the most obvious way to disengage is to just press the brake. And you could do that if you needed to suddenly take over, or if you just preferred to take over, you just tap the brake and then put your foot over on the accelerator. But I think you can also just press the Blue Cruise button again, and then I put my foot on the accelerator and I'm good to go. Let's see what happens if I engage it again. Takes like a second, and then we're in. So we didn't get to give Blue Cruise a full test, but the included lane keeping that required my hand on the wheel was actually very impressive. It did a great job handling some fairly windy roads, so it gives me a lot of confidence in the Ford system as a whole. Blue Cruise is more limited compared to autopilot, but when it's available, it seems to perform very well. Consumer Reports rated it the best of these systems, and one benefit is that it can be hands-off using driver monitoring to see that your eyes are on the road. The sensors for that are located right behind the steering wheel. Overall, the Mustang Mach-E drives great. This is a base model, so performance only gets better from here. This car definitely delivers with driving dynamics, ride quality especially, and performance. It gives you the horsepower you want and is just really great to drive. As far as overall drive, I would put this car quite a bit ahead of the Hyundai Ioniq 5. It just drives and handles better. I still prefer certain things about the Model Y over the Mach-E, but ride quality is definitely much better in the Mach-E. I find some things particularly interesting about reviewing base model EVs as well. Mainly the fact that they're priced as EVs but include some very much sub $20,000 car features. In my opinion, if you're already getting ready to spend $43,000 on a new EV that you plan to keep for a while, it's worth the $4,000 upgrade to get the premium Mach-E. You could of course have that conversation for each feature until you're ending up buying the GT Mach-E, but I think getting the base model will definitely leave some to be desired. As for charging, this is still lacking with any and every EV that isn't a Tesla. We had the exact terrible charging experience that's really frustrating to deal with if you rely on public charging. We went to a charge point station with 2 of 4 stalls operational. We managed to charge at 50 kilowatts. That was station limited since the Mach-E is capable of charging at speeds of 150 kilowatts, but then later we navigated from the in-screen navigation to another station that was fully broken. It said it was available, but then the screen on the car simply said charging fault. This kind of frustrating experience makes it really hard to fully recommend these cars. If you can charge at home, then your experience will be great. You get home, plug in your you are good to go the next morning, no stress. But if you plan to road trip often or rely on third-party charging to drive this vehicle, you'll very likely find yourself frustrated. This is something that desperately needs improvement in the US as a whole and remains the biggest downside of buying any non-Tesla EV. Tesla's supercharger network cannot be beat with amount of locations and reliability in particular. One other thing to note with the Mach-E compared with other EVs is that it currently qualifies for half of the EV tax credit. Right in its price range is the Tesla Model Y, qualifying for a full $7,500 off, along with a few other EVs, so if you're in that boat, that's a big factor. The EV market is getting extremely competitive, and I'm very excited to see it. Overall, Ford has done a great job with this car, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for this model as well as others in their Model E program. In the meantime, if you want to see my latest review of the Tesla Model Y, you can check out that video linked up here or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.